travel back in time to the 80s, reliving the shenanigans.
It was the early 80s, and sex was still a good way to meet new people.
The disappointment.
Now, that's a real shame when folks be throwing away a perfectly good white boy like that.
And the self-confidence.
I'm 6 foot, 3 inches tall, and maintain a very consistent panda bear shape.
Because just like you, we're stuck in the 80s.
Sure, it's not 1985 right now, but who knows what tomorrow will bring.
Hey, welcome to Stuck in the 80s. It's your old pal Spearsy.
And Brad in New York.
And today we visit with the co-founder of the 80s alt-rock band Gene Loves Jezebel. It's our interview with Michael Aston.
Sugar, I've been missing you, and I've been wondering, where it is you're hiding.
Stuck in the 80s is now a listener-supported podcast. Yes, Gene might love Jezebel, but Steve and I love patrons. That's why we've partnered up with patreon.com. Join up and enjoy exclusive bonus content, VIP Zoom happy hours, and more. Just go to patreon.com/stuckinthe80s podcast.
Hey gang, I've been having a lot of fun lately talking to the musicians who'll be playing on board the 2022 Voyage of the 80s cruise. Brad, you got a sound effect for me? I love that. It never gets old, my friend.
One trick pony.
A few weeks ago, you might remember I chatted with John Easdale from Dramarama.
So good.
And this week I got a chance to talk with Michael Aston, who is the co-founder of Gene Loves Jezebel, along with his... can you call him an estranged twin brother, Jay?
Yeah, it pains me to see that happen with twins as the father of twins, but I understand how these things can happen.
This is a fun chat. We do not talk about the legal problems between Michael and Jay. Instead, we get some really interesting stories about the early days of the band, and we get to find out the story of how their song Desire ended up on the soundtrack to a John Hughes movie, She's Having a Baby.
It's an amazing soundtrack, and Michael has a really fun story about how the song shows up on the soundtrack, and even that he makes a short cameo in the movie itself, which I didn't know.
No, I didn't either. I mean, I keep meaning to find the movie online. I don't have that. Of all the John Hughes movies I don't have that one on DVD, I don't think. And you don't see it on streaming all that often.
Yeah, I've seen it once, and I know I complained about it on the podcast.
It's
just so emotionally manipulative.
It's sort of based on his real life early in his career when he got started in the ad business in Chicago, and that's kind of what that movie starts off as. So it's kind of it's a nice little look. It's an underrated gem.
I feel like it's a cheap out to have the wife in danger during delivery, and it's just, I don't know. It just seems like a cheap stunt to me.
I don't know. I will always hold it in high regard, but I remember the first time I saw it and hearing the soundtrack and hearing Desire for the first time, thinking, what band is this? Because unlike you, I didn't have the benefit of growing up with K-Rock in my backyard. So this song, and we didn't really have college radio in Florida. So this was my first exposure.
Nice.
Anyway, there's this really kind of, not an awkward moment, but we're very early on in the interview. Michael and I are talking, and he's talking about the cruise, and he mentions he's really looking forward to going to Barbados.
Well, you're going to have to swim for that one, Chief.
Yeah. And I almost stopped him at the time and said, well, I don't think we're going to Barbados. But at the same time, I really want to see his band play, so I'm not going to throw any roadblocks up in the way. He's probably thinking of the lineup for 2021 when Barbados was on the itinerary.
A port of call, as it were.
Yeah, it's changed. For 2022, I hope Michael's equally excited about seeing the Bahamas, St. Martin, or St. Thomas, which he should be, because St. Martin and St. Thomas are amazing.
I mean, St. Martin has 2 A's right in a row.
Yep, that's that good. It does that for the phone book.
That and Aardvark are the only 2 I can think of.
I'm sure there's others. Is there not?
I don't know. I'm sure our listeners will correct me with great haste.
Yes, they're all typing away as we speak.
Brad at SAT80s.com. Bring it on.
By the way, I think I know we talk about the cruise from time to time. I don't think we've mentioned lately that with the whole COVID situation, some people's travel plans have changed. Obviously, requirements for traveling international is always in flux. But what has happened is a nice number of cabins have opened up on the 2022 cruise. So keep your eye on their website, www.the80scruise.com, because if you're still interested in going, the chances are pretty good that you can join us for the cruise this spring.
So getting back to the interview, Michael he's a trip. He's a real trip. He's super frank about a lot of the things you ask him about. And I loved his take on what I'll call the jukebox shows, where they play 3 songs, and then you unplug and you run off stage. So once again, you talk to somebody and it just gets me so psyched to see them perform live on the cruise and to see a full set, not just the 3 song and get out.
Yeah. These are the shows that to me always make the cruise special, because you find a band where you know 1 or 2 songs or 3 songs and you get to hear a full set. Then suddenly, this is what happened with me with Naked Eyes. I knew 2 songs. I went and saw them perform live, and now I'm obsessed with them. So weird, right? Anyway, it's a fun interview. After the interview, we have the usual seggies, including a pptmn and a very amusing letter from Dave Dirt. But for now, sit back and enjoy this interview with Michael Aston of Gene Loves Jezebel. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
We're talking today because your band is on the 2022 voyage of the 80s cruise. Is this going to be your first cruise?
Yeah, it's the first time I've ever been on a cruise. I've never desired to go on a cruise, and when I saw Barbados, and they pay me to do it, and they'd feed and I could bring a couple of my kids, I thought, hell, why not? Let's do this. But it looks like it's a fun time. I mean, how couldn't it be? 2 long sets, host a couple of parties. I mean, it's going to be a joy. So I'm still waiting for them to send me a bill, but there we go. No, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It seems like, why not, right?
Is there something in particular you're looking forward to doing that week?
Well, a lot of nothing, to be honest with you. I was going to ask, can you rehearse on the boat? Because we need like 90 minutes of material. We got till March to get it together. But I want to go back to our early material and work all the way, 30 years of work, So I think that's a fantastic opportunity. Most of the things these days, aside from my club shows, where I can do what I want, are 80 shows. And they tend to want you for 15, 20 minutes, and you can only play 4 or 5 songs, which I've always thought was a waste of money and a waste of time, to be honest with you. But if people want to pay that, fine. But I much prefer to have a full performance. If we're going to get dressed up and look the part, let's play a full set, full performance. So that's what I'm most looking forward to about this cruise, to be honest with you. And that's what really turned me on about it.
I've seen one of your short sets before. I've seen the band perform in, I think it was Las Vegas for one of the Lost 80s weekends.
Right. There you go.
I always thought that must be a tough thing to do, because you've got like 7 bands that they're trying to cram on the stage, and I can't imagine it was much fun for the musicians.
It's a waste of time. I mean, the time you dress up, you have to rush onto stage because it's all so tight. Everyone's playing their 10, 15 minutes. And when the headline is only playing 20 or whatever it is, the time you walk on stage, before you know it, you're walking off, and it's like, wow, it's almost like you've been, sexually assaulted and left in an alley. I don't recommend it. I love to perform, but I'll be quite honest with you. It's not an ideal world for me. I love to play a set, Yeah. There are crowded people into your music, and you're playing for an hour or more. You meet them, you have a few drinks, that's my idea of a show, So.
Sure. There's a lot of other UK acts that are on the bill for 2022. ABC, Human League, John Parr, Dire Straits, Legacy, Modern English, Johnny Hates Jazz.
It's an amazing lineup, to be quite honest with you. It's very diverse. I've played with 1 or 2 of those bands in the past, but there's many of them I've never played with or even seen, not since the 80s anyway. So I'd love to see Human League. I'm a big fan of their early material. I know the guys in Modern English. I know Flock really well. I think Dramarama are playing too.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
They will be, yes.
Yeah. So I know those guys really well. We're good friends. So that's going to be fun.
Sure. I just talked to John Easdale the other week. So, and we had a conversation, the same type of interview that we're having. He's such a nice guy.
He's a lovely guy, yeah.
Yeah.
Salt of the earth. Actually, the whole band's great. The loveliest people you'll ever meet, you know. And they always bring a great show. I mean, it's it's basically the 80s Who, you know. They really go for it. It's pretty spectacular.
Is there any sort of ongoing kinship you think that bands have that got their start together, like in a particular region or music scene?
No, the weird thing is, I mean, in the day, I think of probably true of any generation. You don't really speak to other bands because they're competitors, you know. We did a whole tour with New Order and the Bunnymen, and I don't think we exchanged one word the entire tour. But it wasn't born of contempt. It basically insecurity, you know, competition. But later in life, last 20 years, I've got to know, you know, the guys from Flock, as I said, the guys from Dramarama, all the bands I played, the 80 shows, the When in Rome's, you know. So, you know, Bow Wow Wow. You just hang out with people now, and it's that's one thing about those shows that is good. It's all sociable backstage. You have dinner, and there's wine and there's beer, and everybody's chatting and laughing. So that's one of the better aspects of being an old man and doing these 80s shows, I guess. Yeah.
Now, Gene Loves Jezebel came from Wales, correct?
Mm-hmm. Originally,
and
yeah.
Everything I know from Wales comes from watching the Netflix series The Crown. So, which means I don't know anything.
But I've never seen The Crown, but I know what it's about. But I'm not interested in the monarchy, you know. So, but I know my wife is, for example, and all Americans seem to be Anglophiles, or I can see, you know, they have a totally distorted view of England. You know, there's beautiful rolling hills, and you know, we'll fight them on the beaches, and everyone will have cucumber sandwiches and be very polite. That's not England. A bunch of bastards.
I know that a lot of amazing artists came from Wales, including Badfinger, The Alarm, Tom Jones, and even John Cale from Velvet Underground.
Yeah, we worked with John Cale. Isn't that wild?
Well, that's crazy, man. He's such a legend.
He kind of almost discovered us. He actually made us hip because we were on Beggars Banquet or Situation 2 at the time, and we played the ICA, this left field concert, art gallery, and he came to see us and loved us and asked to work with us. So we flew off to New York and recorded with him. We actually played a couple of shows with him too. In fact, I played with all the Velvet Underground with the exception of Lou Reed. So,
oh, wow.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, a band that I love, you know. So,
yeah.
But we had a great time in New York. We didn't get much done because he was high as a kite 99.9% of the time and completely blew our minds, you know, because we were just innocent Welsh boys. We'd never even been on a plane to anywhere. So suddenly we're flown into New York in the dead of winter, you know, 5 below zero. Absolutely hilarious. But at the time it was not so hilarious. Yeah. But what a trip. Danceteria in New York. I don't know if you remember that. It's a great club. Interesting time. Early 80s was a great time, you know.
I can't imagine that a lot of bands that formed about the time you did must have had Velvet Underground as a big influence.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Velvet Underground said to everybody that it doesn't really matter if you're not terribly good a player, you know, as long as you're creative, anything is possible. I mean, look what came out of Velvet Underground. You know, so many great bands, the Bunnymen, Hughes and Mary Chain, just so many. I mean, to me, they're the precursors of, they're the manifesto that became punk rock. It's basically just do it, you know, just play, you know, to hell with the guitar solos and all that. They were the freshest band, the most alternative. When everyone else was singing about love and, you know, peace and the depths of murder, you know, they were singing about, you know, sadomasochism, you know,
heroin,
transgender. I mean, it's amazing, you know.
Yeah.
They just taught, they taught you, you know, that's like a few other bands actually, like the Kinks and whatever else, that you could really sing about anything, you know, as long as it carried a melody and it was intriguing, people were into it. They not everyone's a Carpenters fan, you know, so
yeah.
I grew up with the Carpenters and ABBA, and I hated those bands so much. I swear to God.
I don't. I mean, I grew up listening to Kiss, so I don't know what kind of band I would have formed if I was in a.
Yeah, Kiss was an American thing.
Yeah,
they were nothing. Same as Aerosmith, they were nothing in the UK till I would say the 80s. You know, maybe the late 80s.
Yeah. So
in the 70s, we had the Who and Led Zeppelin. We didn't really care about the American knockoff bands, you know. So
it is so weird, the difference, because I don't think I'd even seen the Who or even heard maybe 2 Who songs until they did their farewell tour back in like
Isn't that wild?
85. Yeah.
Which like I saw Zeppelin twice in 75. And I saw Queen on their first tour, and I saw Deep Purple in the early days. And I saw all these bands in their prime when they all had, natural pigment in their hair, if they got hair at all now. And and now they're doing these massive tours, and none of them can sing anymore or play anymore. I mean, they're old men. I'm sorry, I'm not being mean. It's the way it goes. But I didn't want to go see. I had no interest in see. I mean, I'd watch Jimmy Page anywhere he played, but I had no desire to see the likes of Plant because they lost their voices like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But that's not being mean. That's just the way it goes. We all lose an octave. Yeah.
There's that old joke about how Mick Jagger's never going to be dancing around on stage when he's 50 years old singing Satisfaction.
They said 40. Lester Bangs said that. He was wrong. He was what is he, 80 now? He's got to be close.
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm 64, he's got to be at least 15 years older than I am, because I remember him when I was a kid, So, yeah. So, but he still do. I mean, it's a cliche, but he's doing it. He does it well, He's something of a pastiche, it's like parody, but I don't know why he wants to do it. Maybe he's got lots of blue pills. Maybe that's it.
So when you're seeing all these bands, I mean, these bands these legendary bands at the beginning of their career, like the Queens and the Zeppelins and stuff like that. What was the original spark? Was there any spark from that kind of led you to say, "Gosh, I want to be a musician. I want to form a band"?
Well, actually, they put me off being a musician because they were actually very capable musicians. They were great players. They'd been schooled, through the blues and whatever else. Skiff, everyone knows the stories. Like I said, go back to the likes of the Velvet Underground, or maybe something like Astral Weeks, Van Morrison. That's what inspired me to want to do it, to be, poetic, get the performance, So, yeah, I mean, when I saw Queen, Deep Purple, they were playing the venues that we were playing, like 1,000 people tops, and they weren't even sold out shows. So they actually all took off, with the exception of like Zeppelins, who were massive in America and whatever else. Most of those bands were just club bands, relatively, And Band-Aid, the likes of that's what made it take all off, When I came to America the first time of '84, I remember our first tour was actually in '85, and I remember going around the country, and all they played was the fucking Doors, Led Zeppelin, Stone. I'm like, who the fuck listens to this shit anymore? That's generations ago. But it was everywhere. I'm convinced that's why those bands became, because you could not escape them, Even my kids know every Rolling Stone song ever written, So we didn't have a chance. There's only a few bands that actually escaped that mega rock,
Yeah, well, corporate rock had that super hold on the radio stations back then. But I mean, your band found a lot of luck with college radio and probably also with K-Rock out in LA.
Yeah,
right?
the college radio loved us. So I mean, they played the hell out of Immigrant, for example, and Desire was the #1 single. I think it was '85. They played Discover, and alternative radio was actually pretty small. It was like Los Angeles. I think it was Boston. Just small patches. It wasn't everywhere. So we'd do our tours and we'd play the likes of Boston, sell it out for 3 nights, LA, sell it out for 6 nights. Then you play New Orleans, you're playing in front of 20 people,
Oh, jeez.
So, but it's not a measure of who you are. That's just the way the business was. If you're not being played on the radio in those days, no one knew who you were. There was no internet. There was no YouTube. There was no, Now you get exposure, but just by making a TikTok video, apparently,
Yeah.
Which is wonderful in many ways, but it's just a different era. Yeah.
Well, I mean, MTV was there. I mean, was there a strategy?
MTV was later. MTV came in for us. Yeah, '85 it was there. And they actually embraced us, having said that. But we were the perfect foil for MTV because we were so colorful. We had makeup, silks and satins, and we embraced it. We weren't the ugliest band that ever lived. We're 2 sexy twins, so, and we were Welsh, so there was a bit of intrigue. I can't imagine you mentioned the Crown. Well, there you are. We were the Crown. You know,
Yeah.
he was the queen. He was the queen, and I was Princess Di. That was essentially what it was.
Well, isn't that kind of like I heard an interview with you where you were talking about the origin of the band name, and you were saying that someone had called your brother Jezebel and you were Gene, and he wondered whether or not Gene loved Jezebel, which I thought was.
Yeah, that's the fact. Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah. But my brother picked up on it. I let it go. I thought it was the silliest name on this planet. I'd named the band Slavarian, and I was quite happy with that, to be honest with you.
Yeah. What was the background of that? I heard something that involved socialism and the Welsh word for money.
Yeah. It's a basis of those two. We wanted to be we wanted to draw on our Welsh roots, but we also wanted to make it as crazy as Joy Division or as wild as Bauhaus. We're dialing into the darker, that the platforms. We knew where our bread might be buttered, so we kind of dialed into that. I think Joy Division would have been a huge influence on us,
Sure.
and Pill, at least in presentation,
I was watching videos this morning, and I was watching a video of Martha Quinn from MTV interviewing you. I think it was probably around 1985, and it was funny because I got the impression someone had written the questions for her, and she didn't quite know, how to, to talk to
do
people.
this.
Yeah,
yeah, we didn't either. I mean, here's our level of our innocence. We thought we'd come to America, play a few shows, we'd never return. We had no desire to come here, play here, let alone marry someone, be married 30 years and have 5 kids, So, but I had no intentions of coming back. It was like, we come out, shag all your women, drink all your beer, use all your drugs, and we're going home. So, it's pretty much how it worked out, to be honest with you.
What do you think the breakthrough moment was? What was the moment where you said, holy crap, this is gonna, be something. This is gonna be a career.
Well, the goal was just a cliche. It was really we just wanted to play music. We were amazed that anyone would come to see us, let alone let us make a record, So we just day by day, So, but I think the turning point was when we made our first couple of singles, and then John Peel gave us a session. So he started playing us, and we started building an audience in Europe. So the only reason we came to the US was because a tour in Italy had been cancelled. Would have been our first tour in Europe. There'd been a riot in some soccer game, a European Cup final, when a lot of Italian fans died. So it was a dangerous place for us to go. So they thought. So they wouldn't let us go. So I picked up the phone. A friend said I should give a lady in New York a call, club called the Danceteria, and see if she'll have you there. And I'm like, who the hell is going to have us in New York? Who would know about us? We didn't have a record deal. We had nothing going there. But I picked the phone up. She said, yeah, come on over. And that was the beginning, And that tied in with the John Cale thing. Both things occurred at the same time.
Wow.
So we came, we'd already had a great following in the UK. So it wasn't just, it's not like we had a big hit single and then people came to our shows. We'd built up an underground following, a base, So people would be waiting in their hundreds no matter where we played. I wish we could have filmed all that in that era, because there'd be people camping on our doorstep of the flat we lived in Pimlico, So it was wild. We were treated as like rock stars, but no one knew who we were. But the fans did, and they followed us all over the country, all over Europe. So the same crew, 50, 60 of them. So it's crazy, you're playing in Blinking Hamburg, and there's a kid you just seen the night before in Sheffield, You go, how the fuck did you get here? And they'd hitchhike, they'd jump on trains, they'd sleep, outside the venue, they'd sleep at bus stations, but they were committed. And I'm like, these people are insane. So, but there you have it.
The song Desire, I think I heard it for the first time on the John Hughes movie, She's Having a Baby.
Yeah.
Is there a story behind how that song got included on the soundtrack?
Well, because we were signed to Geffen. Initially, we'd done it for Beggars Banquet, or actually Situation 2, our first independent label, which is a subsidiary of Beggars Banquet. They're the same label. But we'd recorded it, and the original version is the better version. That's with the original guitar player, Ian Hudson, and it was written before the other members of the band, the more well-known members, came in. They actually took all the glory from the guys who did all the work before it. But that's another story. They did a fine job. So, yeah, we came... Geffen signed us. We know Geffen was. I knew that John Lennon was signed to it, and Elton John was. I thought it must be okay, but let's go with them. So, but Relativity had supported us in this independent like metal label that picked us up, and they'd supported us really well. I mean, they'd done a really good job with college radio and whatever else. And we released Desire, and it was flying. The original Desire was flying. I mean, it was top of the indies, and it was looking to go into the billboards and all that thing. Then Geffen stepped in, and from what I've heard, Relatively were just pissed off. Damn, we did all the work, and they've stolen our band. That's the way of the world, I guess, out here. So then we came here and we recut it. We did a great pop version of it. People loved it. Got number 7, I think, of the dance charts. It was a breakthrough song for us and a great video. The guy Jeff Stein did a great video. We'd never really shot any videos. The other videos we'd done had been done with like friends or a couple of kids I knew from St. Martin's School of Art in London, which my first wife had gone to. So it was very much on a do-it-yourself basis. And then suddenly we were in a budget and they're spending $250,000 in a video.
I mean, his soundtracks were always kind of revered, at least among American teenagers. I mean,
he broke a lot of bands, didn't he?
Yeah.
What's the song they did? I mean, Psychedelic Furs, a lot of great bands, actually.
Yeah. I mean, it's good company to be on a John Hughes soundtrack.
Yeah. I'm actually in that movie. Yeah.
Oh, you are? Where are you in that movie?
At the very end, it's a really funny story because we're a band that really, we played hard, we partied hard as any other band that ever lived. So we played, I think, an LA show. And the manager said, come on, guys, you got to go down to Paramount. They want you to, Paramount Studios, they want you to go be part of their movie. And all the band said no. The only one who said yes was me. Well, they couldn't wake the rest of the other people, the other members of the band up, is the truth. But I get up, So I walked to Paramount. I met John Hughes and I met Stuart Copeland. And so, I mean, I said, hi, how are you? Fan of the band. That's meeting, it's still, you're in the presence of greatness, So at least I think greatness, an amazing drummer. Yeah. So he says, all you got to do is think of a name. I'm going to ask you, well, what are you going to name your child? And I thought, God, I got to make a name up because, the more obscure the name and the more interesting the name, the more chance they're going to use me in the movie. So I just, at the top of my head, said Winthorpe or Winthrop, but it was a name that I'd never heard of. And I did some research years later, and there is actually a name, but I just thought they must know I'm just making shit up here. But anyway, a few years later, it comes on TV, and my little boy, my youngest son, he's probably 4 or 5 years of age, and I come up at the end, and he absolutely he thinks he's seen the Wizard of Oz. It's like, what the hell is going on? And my wife laughed so hard. But it was it's 2 seconons. But at the end of the movie, they ask a bunch of famous people of the time. The guy,
sure.
What would you name a child?
Yeah.
And I'm in there with all the guys with cheers, and so
I've got to watch it again. I know that movie.
No, you got to don't blink, miss it.
No, I didn't know. I know the ending
on the way out, and so people are going to leave it, but it's there.
No, I mean, I've seen the ending 1,000 times, but I just didn't know that you were one of those. Now I have to go back and watch it.
And they do a great job with the scene they put Desire in is phenomenal. So fair play to them, And also the main actor in that, do you remember his name?
Kevin Bacon.
So the first exposure we had to movie, he's in some movie. He's a skateboarder, and I'm watching on like HBO, Showtime, one of those things when we're on a tour, and he's wearing a cow T-shirt. It's one of the first T-shirts we ever made.
Oh wow. And
I'm thinking, God, we must be totally hip if Kevin Bacon, it's the beginning of his career. It's not like he's a superstar.
Yeah.
But so still. I was totally chuffed. Little things like that, right?
Yeah.
Well, that shirt goes for like $800 on eBay now, if you can find one. It's one of the most expensive shirts you can buy, So I'm going to make a bunch more of them. They're all my designs anyway, so I should have copyrighted them.
Yeah, I'm just godsmacked that you met John Hughes. I mean, he's like
just for a second again.
Even then, a second with he's sort of like one of the patron saints of the 80s.
Well, it was a bizarre thing because growing up in Wales and watching black and white TV with my mom, you see the Metro Golden Mayor and the Lion and the Paramount Studios and the movies they show within the movies in that place. And actually to go there and the walk through those gates is like, damn, what a trip this is, you know.
Colin Hay from Men at Work was once asked who he wanted to work with someday, and he said Dolly Parton, which which kind of blows my mind. So I have to ask you, outside of your genre of music, is there an artist or musician that you would be your dream collaborator?
I'd love to work with Jimmy Page. How's that? I like I like Jimmy to have his acoustic guitar and us to write an acoustic record. That would be like my dream scenario, you know. Or maybe Neil Young. That's another great. You know?
Oh, that's a good pick. Yeah.
Yeah, but a lot of my heroes. But even that, like Colin said, I mean, Dolly Parton, that would be pretty amazing, wouldn't it? Yeah, Bobby Gentry, how's that? I'm a fan of country music too, at least the old guys, you know.
Yeah, of course.
Most of them are dead now. There's no one you could really work. But I'd like to make like a Celtic, because Zeppelin they always had that Welshness about them. They had a love for Wales, you know. They did Zeppelin 3 was recorded mostly in Wales, you know. Rockfield, we worked at Rockfield, which is a famous studio, which everybody worked at. And the day we worked there, it was like Avalon, you know. We'd reached, oh my God, you know, all those great records that are being made. Then suddenly we were recording in this place, which was really a dump. It was in the middle of the country, but lovely memories, you know. Like when you're a fan, you can't imagine, you know, working or being in the same situations as your idols, you know, or the people that you totally loved and respected, you know, the records you played 1 billion times, you know.
Sure. So, is there a quality about Wales that you think it imparts upon its musicians and the people who later go on to do great things? Is there something about it? Is it? I think
I think that all the smaller, like the Scottish, the Irish have it, the Welsh have it in spades. It's that England is the primary force, you know. It's we're all outliers, you know, so you always feel like an underdog, or you always feel like they regard you as less than them, you know. You have this inferiority complex. So, but it does force you into a kind of tribal thing, and so you tend to be you know, excited or by your past and your histories and the myths, you know. So, yeah, there is something special about it. There's just a great sense of identity, you know. You can say the Welsh, you know, and you just say, it's Wales. It's like in England, there's so many, you know, subcultures in England. You know, you walk 10 miles and the dialects change. But, and the cultures change. But in Wales, there's one, you know, you got the mountains that run to the sea, and if you can't sing, you better get a job, you know.
And it has its own language, too.
It does, yeah.
Do you know it?
I don't know much of it now. We're from South Wales, but no, it's taught in schools. But we know phrases, you know, Bore da, Baramainen, but you know, we weren't raised to speak it, you know. So
yeah, you're going to have a really great time on this cruise. I'm really looking forward to meeting you in person and seeing finally a full set of Gene Loves Jezebel.
Brilliant. Yeah, looking forward to meeting you, Steve, and enjoyed this. It's been fun.
There you go, Michael Aston of Gene Loves Jezebel.
I love the points you brought up about the band being from Wales and all of the other musical kind of legacy and connections there.
Yeah, I was trying to get him to say, like, he actually did speak a little bit of Welsh to me, but I was hoping he'd be fluent because that would have kind of blown my mind. I'm so weirdly obsessed with Wales lately. I don't know why.
I was a little surprised that he couldn't. That just everybody I've ever met from Wales is so proud of that.
Yeah,
and, you know.
His stories, when we started talking about the Velvet Underground and his stories about playing with all of the members except for Lou Reed, that just kind of blew me away.
That's crazy. And speaking of that, did you notice that Apple TV has a documentary about Velvet Underground right now?
I did. I haven't had a chance to watch it. I've seen the trailer, and the trailer looks amazing. Seriously, if you love 80s music, especially, you know, the beginning of 80s music, the bands that were there that kind of established the sound, and you have Apple TV Plus or whatever it's called these days, seriously consider watching that documentary. Like Michael said, the Velvet Underground it's inspired a lot of what we hear in our
Oh my
decade.
gosh, yeah. I mean, almost as much as Roxy Music, or maybe as much as Roxy Music.
Yes.
You know, that's often name checked as a kind of foundational band, but I think Velvet Underground is in there too.
I never thought about his point of, so many bands that I talk to, especially ones that are British, have always talked about the influence of the Sex Pistols.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a punk band where they didn't know how to play their own instruments, but they didn't care. The Velvet Underground was doing that before punk rock. As he says, the Velvet Underground kind of gave rise to punk rock in a way.
Yeah, they opened the door and someone walked through.
Yeah.
And that someone was Steve Spears. Epic trash.
Oh man, but I seriously, I know you're kind of hit or miss on it, but she's having a baby. I kind of want to go back and watch that again.
I want to see his cameo. I'll tell you that, and
Yeah.
maybe I'll give it another chance.
Can
maybe
you-
it won't seem so emotionally manipulative now that my children are grown and out of the house.
Yeah, I can see where maybe you'd be a little, you kind of feel like it's a little personal there.
You're just pulling the levers. It's cheap.
Yeah.
Come on, you're better than that, John Hughes.
I don't know. I'd love to be around him, and me be able to ask him questions about it. Can you even imagine? Can the thought even process in your brain about meeting him in person?
I'm not sure I'd be able to form cogent thoughts or complete sentences.
Yeah.
I just probably stroke out. And then I'd curl up on the floor and I'd cry.
You know what makes me want to curl up on the floor and cry?
Pretty much anything, I'd imagine.
Come on, say it.
That's the worst transition ever.
Say it.
The Seggies. Steve, I know you're still recovering from that transition, so let me handle this. Those were the tuneful stylings of the listener mailbag.
Oh, that's right. Here's a segment where someone writes us in a story that they probably shouldn't have, in hopes that we don't read it on the air, but we still do.
Yes, we do. This letter, to protect the parties involved, this letter will remain anonymous. It was written to us by someone whose initials are Dave Dirt. This is fun. Buckle up, kids. Here we go. Hi, Steve and Brad. You both mentioned that you didn't curse or anything when you were the age of the kids in Stand By Me. Maybe I was just different, but at age 11, I was definitely already cussing like a sailor and smoked a little. I was even sneaking drinks out of the liquor cabinet once in a while. I didn't have any older siblings, but I guess maybe I got the smoking thing from kids at my school. It was your typical small town K through 12. And even in 1983, 1984, it was still pretty much like the school in Dazed and Confused. Yes, that was set in 1976, but we were just that far behind the times. I remember one time in 6th grade, I was going with this one girl, who shall remain nameless. She was spending the night at a mutual friend's house. The other girl's house is a few miles away. My girlfriend wanted me to go over, and she said she'd do something to me that, quote, the older girls did. Okay, she actually came out and said, I'll give you a BJ, but I'm trying to keep this letter PG-ish. I was ecstatic. I hopped on my spray-painted silver 10-speed and started riding over. I'm picturing like breaking away.
Yeah.
It's just like, the Italians are coming for you, kid. I remember that there was a road that went by the railroad tracks. It would cut a good mile or two off the distance. So I turned down that road and started pedaling harder. Worth noting, it had rained a ton that week. I was so focused on getting over to, quote, do the things the older kids did, unquote, that I never even saw the mud puddle encompassing the entire road. It was so deep and muddy, my old 10-speed hit that sucker and instantly stopped, hung there for a second, and then fell straight over on its side. My entire right side was covered in mud. Damn. So much for the sexy time. Luckily, there were no leeches. I tucked my tail between my legs, turned around, and pedaled home. Oh well. Life went on, and a few years later, after graduating, she realized that she liked women as much as I did, so I guess everything worked out for the best. Still stuck in the 80s, and probably the mud too. Dave Dirt.
Wow. So much to process.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It's such a visual. Like, you can picture it all happening.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I'm telling you. I can't believe. Oh, my God.
Oh, Dave, that's a good one.
We've overshared on this show before, but this...
It's always nice when other people do it for us.
Yes. By all means, friends of the podcast, please, more like this. This is classic. Oh, my God. That just feels like something you could paint.
Yeah, it does.
in
Time
the
and
back of your
place.
head.
It's
Yeah.
evocative of time and place, as I like to say.
As always, we love your letters. Just send them to podcast@sit80s.com.
Please, please tell me now. Please tell me now.
Hey, it must be time for Please Tell Me Now, PPTMN, where we answer a question sent in from a listener. This one comes from Mike in Oz, Australia, I presume, right?
Either that or he's over the rainbow.
Or
it's also possible.
Could be the prison from that HBO series. I don't know.
Just a lot of options. Let us
I
know,
didn't really
Mike.
watch it. So, for some reason, I keep watching Band of Brothers over and over again.
Have we talked about this? I'm watching it for the first time.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I have to kind of pick my spots on when to watch it. Like, I can't just come home from a long 12-hour day of work and plop down and watch a Band of Brothers episode. Like, I need to be emotionally prepared to watch the show.
It's dark.
Oh my gosh, but it's so good.
Yeah. I watched some of it this morning, and it was Bastogne. I watched the Bastogne episode.
Okay.
Dark.
Yeah, I think I just saw that one.
Well,
it's like episode 5. Anyway, it just turned 20. If you can believe
20
that.
years old?
20. That's why it came to my attention, because I saw a story about that. I'm like, how did I never see this? And I realized, my kids were really little. I didn't have a lot of time to watch TV then. So, But wow, it's good.
Bastogne is one of the things that gets me, because my mom's dad was in World War II in the Army.
Okay, sure.
And he was at Bastogne. He was at the Battle of the Bulge. And he died when I was pretty young. I don't, too early for me to be asking questions about Battle of the Bulge and Bastogne.
So tell me, Grandpa.
But my uncle, who's only 9 years older than me, because surprise, of the family, he like me, really loves war movies and stories about World War II and stuff. He was always trying to get his dad to tell him the stories of serving at Battle of the Bulge and Bastogne, and it just wouldn't do it. It was so traumatizing to him.
I can only imagine. I mean, it was funny because I was talking to my mom about watching Band of Brothers, because she was asking me, hey, you have anything good for me to watch? My mother is watching The Sopranos for the first time, which I find hilarious. But anyway, I was asking her about Band of Brothers, and she said, no, she hadn't really seen it. She wasn't really that interested in it. But I found out that her uncle had served in the Army in World War II and was a sharpshooter in Bastogne.
Wow.
Yeah, so now I want to look him up and see what was his service, what his service record was. I never would have known that if I hadn't mentioned that I was watching the show to my mom. So
that's what my uncle keeps trying to do is find his dad's service records. You'll meet my uncle. He's one of the groomsmen. You guys will be up there in penguin suits together.
I don't have to keep him on his best behavior, do I? Because I don't really do that.
Doesn't drink. He's maybe had one drink in his entire life.
There are other ways to perform mayhem than to have too much to drink.
I find that one usually leads to the other.
You're not wrong.
But he's still very committed to trying to find out what happened. And there's some story about having to fire mortars on your own position. It's about the extent of that I've been able to.
Well, I'll have to chat with him about that.
Yeah, he'll be eager to talk to you.
So
anyway,
was there a podcast we were recording, Steve? I forgot.
Anyway, that's all we got for this week. Next week when we talk about Vietnam. Mike from Oz writes us and he says, "Hey guys, a really entertaining interview with Drama Rama's John Easdale in episode 613. Why, thank you, Mike. I had fun doing that one." Mike continues, "I knew very little about him and the band, but found him to be genuine and engaging. I only know the amazing song Anything Anything from the band. Surprisingly, I did not hear it from the album Cinema Verite, but actually from the soundtrack to 1988's A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master." I had that on my list of questions to ask.
Did you really?
Yeah, I was going to ask how that, did he have anything to do?
Did the label just package that up and send it over?
Yeah, because you never know what kind of story you're going to get when you ask that question. But it did help the song a lot. Mike continues, "Despite it being a substandard movie, yes, it was. It did provide a surprisingly strong collection of songs featuring bands such as The Angels, Go West, the Vinnie Vincent Invasion, the Divinals, Blondie, and the aforementioned Drama Rama classic. So, please tell me now, what movie soundtracks have you come to love despite the lackluster cinema experience you had to endure? Always happily stuck in the 80s, Mike and Oz."
Good question.
In 2008, we did a whole show. I mean, that was a long time ago, granted. First 3 years of the podcast, we still had our training wheels on. But episode 118 is a show about great songs from bad movies. But that's not exactly the answer to his question.
That's okay.
What do you think, Brad?
Interestingly, you're going to call up an episode. I'm going to call up another episode. In episode 372, we talked about this very topic, and I got very angry with Drew for suggesting that Footloose was a bad movie.
Yes, I remember.
I'm still simmering, as you can tell. At the time, I went with Repo Man, which I still enjoy the movie. The movie has some great quotable moments, but oh my gosh, it is a slog. But at 90 minutes, it's a slog, which tells you something. But the soundtrack is fantastic. It is just such a great primer for 80s punk. Jen, at the time, repped Bright Lights, Big City, which has a fantastic soundtrack, primarily resting on the back of all the club scenes in the movie. So there's all this great, second half of the 80s club music going on. But the movie is atrocious. It's still the only movie I've ever walked out of. Okay, I was in a car. I drove out of it.
Okay, well, that's good. Did that happen a lot at drive-ins? I mean, did people like...
I don't know. I didn't really care when I was working there.
Yeah.
And we got their money. I don't care if
Yeah, I know. I just kind of curious. Like, you would notice it like halfway through a show and someone's just like...
If my car was more comfortable, we might have stayed a little longer. But a more modern example would be Tron Legacy, which has a fantastic soundtrack. And the movie, let's face it, it looks great, but it makes less sense than the first Tron movie did.
You're probably right. When you said Bright Lights, Big City, it made me think of Less Than Zero. That would be another...
That's not a terrible movie, is it?
I don't ever want to watch it again.
Okay, I can respect that. A few years ago, I read that for the first time.
I'm sure it's a much better book than it is movie.
The book is dark. Oh, it makes you despair for humanity.
Yes. You could argue that Saturday Night Fever is a great soundtrack, but not a great movie. You certainly could say Under the Cherry Moon by Prince is a good soundtrack to a horrible movie.
Okay.
Maximum Overdrive, I think, would be another one.
Yeah.
AC/DC does some of the songs, but that's an unwatchable movie. That's one I should have walked out of, but it was one of those freebie ones, that you had a friend of a friend who got you tickets.
Yeah.
200 Cigarettes is one of those movies. Not an 80s movie, obviously, but it had a very 80s soundtrack. It had Blondie, Cars, Roxy Music, the Ramones, Joe Jackson.
Joe Jackson. What a chameleon that man is.
Yeah. So, there's plenty of examples. It's probably worthy of its own show someday, I guess. But we shall keep hunting for that.
Yeah, we could do a part 2 to episode 372.
Yeah. We kept it hanging on long enough. I wonder if you go back in history and see how many times we started a series that we only got one episode into and then never did another one.
Sometimes the pilot doesn't get picked up.
Yeah. Well, we did it. It happened this year, or might have been last year when we did best instrumentals of the 80s.
That was divisive. We should do another one to divide the public some more.
People were very angry. That's for sure. Anyway, we love your questions. Just send them to podcast@sits.com and put pptmn in the subject line.
Prepare to qualify.
Hey, it's time for Stuck in the Arcade. Finally, this week, I had a chance to pick the sound effect that everyone would write in and complain about. So,
yay.
Pretty strong about that. It's the segment where we basically, we play a sound effect from an arcade machine in the 80s. If you get it right, you're entered into the drawing for the postal-friendly bottle opener. I know we still have some stuff to give away. We have the copies of the book from Annie Zaleski about Duran Duran. We'll have the winners for that very, very soon. And then, I think maybe the next episode even. And then, after that, we have a show where we're giving away copies of a book, the Big Book of Trivia. So we'll do that as well. Lots of books to give away.
I hope you guys can read.
Anyway, pay attention. Here's the arcade sound from episode 613. That's Duck Hunt.
A minor quibble. That's a home gaming system.
No. I checked this ahead of time. It was an arcade game. Had an air
Was
rifle.
it really?
Yep.
Oh, man.
It's probably best known.
I hate being wrong.
For the home version. But
I'm
it was
going full Nate on you now, dude.
Look it up. Google it. I did before the show.
Google it, Brad.
It was an arcade game.
Okay.
Now it could have been the reverse. It could have been maybe it was a home arcade, and then they decided to make it into an arcade game. But
No, I believe you.
the point remains the same. Surprised we only got so many winners for this. I guess people giving up on this seggy already. But go ahead and read the winners, Brad.
Okay, here we go. Winners this week include Cincinnati Joe, Tom Korn in Austria, Brian in Columbus, Carlos M. Hernandez, Alan Titus, Gene in Hollister, Joseph Perdue, and the Tromboner in Lakeville, Minnesota.
I feel like Dave Dirt on my bicycle ride every time I hear the tromboner.
Into the mud, scum queen.
Yeah. God, we need to do a whole episode on just that Steve Martin movie.
Oh, man with two brains. Brilliant.
Brad and I had this weird idea lately. I guess we should share it with you that we might start doing shows instead of doing top 10 dance movies of all time. Maybe just start doing
slightly deeper dives
on single topics. If you have a very pronounced opinion on this, please email us. But otherwise, we're doing it anyway.
Yeah, your opinion is important to us.
Okay, let's spin the wheel. Find out who wins the postal friendly bottle opener.
Okay, you ready for me to spin this bad boy?
Do it.
Okay. Get a couple weeks off from spinning and get all of that muscle back.
Yeah. Things are going to get weird here in the next... I think I'm at the... by the time you listen to this show, I think the wedding will be 4 weeks away.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's 6 weeks this week.
I better finish up my toast.
Cinnamon toast. Looks like it's going to land on Cincinnati Joe. Speaking of cinnamon, don't they have... Isn't that a thing in Cincinnati where they put cinnamon in their chili?
I mean, that's not an uncommon spice for things.
I've never had Cincinnati-style chili, so I don't know.
I don't think I've ever been to Cincinnati, so...
No, I don't think... I've only driven through it on the way, but to Columbus. Anyway, Joe, send us your mailing address, and we'll send you some swag. In the meantime... pay attention. Here's this week's Mystery Arcade sound. If you know it, email us at podcast@sats.com. That's right? Not org.
SIT80s.com.
And
I just renewed it, as a matter of fact.
Oh, nice. Good.
Yeah.
And tune in a few weeks to find out if you are a winner. We'll be right back after this commercial break.
Aha! Inspector, what have you found?
Plain ground beef, plump beans, rich tomatoes, and secret spices. Aha! Here is the key.
The label from a can of homemade chili?
Yes, the suspect was trying to fool us into thinking his chili was homemade. Well, he made a stupid error. Homemade chili does not have a Hormel label on it.
Hormel chili, so close to homemade it just might get you into trouble.
And we're back. We have just a few minutes left. I thought, hey, let's say thanks to a couple new patrons. Jimmy Allison and Kevin Maloney are the latest ones to join the troops. So next time we have a Zoom happy hour, which we're in October, so it'll be any week now.
Any day now. Watch this space.
Maybe. I mean, I say this. This is what's so weird is we record this, and by the time you hear it,
it's already happened. Yeah,
it's already happened. Because I'm thinking maybe next weekend would be good because you'll still be in New York and I'll be in Florida. And
yeah, it kind of depends. Next weekend is either going to be really busy or it won't be, and then the next weekend would be really busy instead.
The weekend after that, I'll be back in New York.
Oh,
and you'll be leaving New York.
Actually, I have to stay an extra week.
Oh, I'm so sad.
I knew you would be.
But you'll be so busy you won't be able to see me anyway. So
well, we'll see. It kind of depends on how things go.
Because I want some good deli.
I know it's literally right around the corner. I had breakfast there today.
I know, but I also promised you I'd make you a lasagna if you came up to the Upper East Side. So,
well, I'm going to need to see you in lingerie so I can have lasagna.
God, that's a deep cut. Keep pulling that one out.
Hey, before we go, I do have one other thing I wanted to mention.
Okay.
Something I saw this week in my wanderings around the internet. I know we all love the Swatch from the 80s.
Yes.
And they have just introduced what they're calling their 1984 Reloaded collection. 6 watches, I think, that they're I'm not sure, honestly, if these are reissues or if they're just new in the style, but they look great.
Oh, wow.
There are a couple Memphis design kind of looking ones. I'm busily trying to figure out which of these watches I need to have on my wrist the next time I'm on the cruise.
I have one. I have a Swatch. I never wear it. I gotta admit, I'm the biggest 80s phony there ever was.
I've been collecting them. I have a couple right now, but I wouldn't mind adding a third to my collection.
Wow.
So I'm looking at these. I'm thinking probably the Rouge and Noir with the red, blue, and yellow hands.
That does sound very Brad.
Oi.
I wear like a Fitbit instead of a watch now. And it's purple.
I won't do that. I want to have a watch on my wrist. I know it's like the signature of an old man that I still wear an analog watch on my wrist to tell me what time it is.
I like that you're an old man.
I do too. I mean, it is who I am.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll be on the cruise and see Brad's new watch. Like I said, go to www.the80screws.com.
I can think of a better reason to book a vacation.
Didn't see your watch? No, man, that's it. That's money well spent.
Well, come say hi.
Yeah.
We'll talk about watches. It'll be great.
Ask us anything. In the meantime, Brad, myself, and probably Michael Aston, we remain here, hopelessly stuck in the 80s.
Stuck in the 80s is now on Patreon. If you'd like to support the show, go to patreon.com/stuckintheeighties podcast. Special thanks to Check Battery Daily for our theme music, and thanks for listening.